Good afternoon, class. Joshua Kaiser here with my informative speech on the history of Moreno Valley entitled Moreno Valley, Founded on Water, Growing on Concrete. The purpose of this speech is to inform my classmates here on the story of Moreno Valley and the history to its present day, and the understanding of how Moreno Valley, as being such a small suburb in the Inland Empire, was one of the forefronts leading to the development of the Inland Empire's Industrial Revolution. Moreno Valley was founded on a waterway field which spanned from Box Springs Mountains and the Bear Valley Mountains and poured down to what we know today as our recreational park, Lake Paris. In just 36 years of being a city, Moreno Valley has been through more changes than a small city, than most small cities ever see. 36 years ago in 1984, Moreno Valley was founded, although the roots go way back to early America. The history of this small community is rooted deep in the roots of the settlements and the forefronts of early American settlements and all the way back as early as the 1700s. For me, I've lived in Moreno Valley for the last 20 years. My wife has been here for 39 years in all of her life, and her family has been here since way back when the city was Moreno, Edgemont, and Sunnymead. So as we look at Moreno Valley and the progress, you can see that it's one of the youngest cities in California, but is actually one of the most diverse and most historically rooted within the state itself. Moreno Valley history dates back to the 1700s when it was rich, fertile land covered with citrus trees and had flowing water running through, which made the land very fertile for farming. And the Native American inhabitants that inhabited the city at the time were the Shoshone, Cahuilla, and Serrano Indians. That's according to Trepozo. The Historical Society of Moreno Valley also puts our dates at around 1780 for the founding and the first known people to inhabit what we know as the city of Moreno Valley today. The land itself stretched clear across to what we know today and into portions of Redlands. And the land was very prosperous and grew, lots of citrus trees and covered the spans that we can still see some today out by UC Riverside and the few remains that go. As the history of Moreno Valley goes, from the early history, a gentleman by the name of Frank Brown, who, according to the Historical Society, came to Moreno Valley as a Yale engineer and developed a waterworks system and put in not necessarily an aqueduct, but constricted the flow of Bear Valley and irrigated the water down into the valley and off into particular farms where he was controlling the land. Frank Brown, funny fact, didn't want when we get down towards the end of this speech, didn't want anything to be remembered him indirectly with Moreno Valley, hence the loose Spanish translation we have of Brown with Moreno Valley as a reminder of Frank Brown, who came to this city. Frank Brown was probably the biggest mistake that Moreno Valley has ever experienced. When he came with his team, there was a decree by the city of Redlands at the point for eminent domain, and they gave the land to the Bear Valley Construction Group, which then allowed Frank Brown to control what we know as the city of Moreno Valley today, and took control of the water, which then forced later on a drought within the city that ended all of the citrus and fertile land. With that, Frank Brown was here in the 1850s after gold was discovered in California in 1849, came out, developed the land, and started selling off the parcels to him and his partners. Once the water dried up from Bear Valley, the settlers moved on and left Moreno Valley stranded as a dry, desolate city. From there, the 1920s, the early modern American history, we see the growth of March Air Force Base, which at the time was a training facility for Air Force pilots, later became through World War II and into the modern era, into the 80s and 90s before it was actually closed for a period of time, was the central hub for growth. Having the Air Force based here generated the economy, stimulated the needs for everything that we needed within the city. The Air Force Base closed down in 1999 and later was reopened as strictly a reserve base During this time, Moreno Valley also was a city falling apart from, we are a low economic city in this. Moreno Valley has yet to hit its, what I believe, its financial peak. At the time right now, we're keeping our city to the ground with building industrial buildings and really just being a central hub for transportation and logistics. On the positive side to that, Moreno Valley also was the central growth spot for the industrial revolution within the Inland Empire, because Moreno Valley's location and our spacing right off the freeway makes us an ideal spot from transiting from the Los Angeles ports out across into Arizona, Texas, and across the Southwest. So Moreno Valley, again, was founded in 1984, officially incorporated as a city, combining Edgemont, Sunnymead, and Moreno into one city. So as we can see, as I leave you here with these final thoughts, it was settled, it was built, it has fallen apart, and now the question is, where does Moreno Valley go from here? So we see our roots transitioned all the way back to early Native American history, and we have the pictographs and the rocks up in the hills and the mountains between San Jacinto and Box Springs. And we saw Frank Brown come in the book by Changing Suburbs by Andrew Jonas. He stated how Frank Brown constricted the waterway and choked Moreno Valley into creating his own drought and almost had his instant sense of karma. So with that, I leave you. Thank you, everyone. Have a great night.